Om Namo Narayana. 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 I bow to Narayana, the Lord, in all his forms and beyond all forms. And in form I bow to him also in you. You know, it's a lovely thing if you can see everybody as an instrument of God. And they may be foolish instruments, they may be expressing only wrong aspects of him, but after all, he is in everything. But if people express the wrong aspects, they get more enmeshed in Maya. And so it isn't necessarily wise because you see God in people to try to be like them. Ramakrishna told a beautiful story about a man who was a disciple of a guru who told him, everything is God. God is in everything. And he was walking in a jungle trail when a big elephant came toward him, and the Mahout cried out, get out of the way, get out of the way, this elephant has gone out of control. And the man reasoned, well, my guru just told me that God is in everything, therefore God is in that elephant. How can God hurt God? Well, when the elephant reached him, he just picked him up and threw him and bruised him and hurt him quite badly. And when the disciple went back to his guru, he said to his guru, where did I go wrong? And the guru said, well, you were perfectly right in saying that God is in the elephant also, but why didn't you listen to God in the form of the Mahout who was saying, get out of the way? So we must understand clearly that there are different aspects of God depending on how deeply his consciousness has become immersed in creating waves with the storm of Maya. And that which takes you toward him is, of course, the thing to follow. Therefore, you must use your discrimination. God is in all, yes, but he is more manifest in some, just as if you have an image which is dirty, you can't see him. I've told the story before of years ago when I lived in my guru's ashram at Mount Washington. I had a little tiny cottage outside which used to be the motor room for bringing cars up the hill from below, back in the days when that building had been a hotel. And I could look out from my desk through a window at a very nice garden with flowers and lots of greenery. Well, one day there was a big rainstorm, and it splattered mud all over the window so that I couldn't enjoy the garden beyond it that much. Well, I was busy working, and I didn't have time to clean the window for a couple of weeks. I got a free Saturday and then got a bucket and cleaned the window off, and I went back into my room and I said, oh, what a beautiful window. And then I smiled because I realized the reason the window was beautiful was because I couldn't see it. I could see through it. So you must remember that the more you can allow God to shine freely through you and not shine through your ego and express anger and emotions and so on, but his pure light, the more you have cleansed your mind. This is what great saints are and great masters. They have cleaned their minds and their consciousness so that when you look at them, as my guru said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. When you are a master, you can do anything. But the trouble is that if you have disciples, and if your job is to help them, then you have to go through the things they have to go through, and you have to go through much more because they don't have the strength to go through that much in order to show them what they must do. Two friends of mine, dear friends here in Delhi, where I live now, in Gurgaon, years ago, Rani Ban and Indu, her son, they went up on Drongiri Mountain in the Himalayas, where Babaji once used to live, my first guru. And they met a saint there. The saint said he could speak in any language, just had to tune in with that language, I believe it. And they asked him, well, how do you eat up here? There is no vegetable garden or anything. And he just was able to materialize food. And he gave them a delicious luncheon. But yes, a saint can do anything, but he doesn't always. I'm going to read to you a little example here from Conversations with Yogananda. This is saying, or conversation number 234. The Master had to face innumerable financial difficulties in establishing his work in America. He never compromised, however. Never, for example, did he seek to attract a wealthy following by charging more for his classes, thereby excluding persons who couldn't afford them. Certain famous teachers had become wealthy by charging high prices for their lessons and attracting wealthy clientele. The Master wasn't interested in wealth. He was interested in serving. He wanted everyone to benefit from what he had to give. Unfortunately, what this meant, as I said, was that his financial worries were both constant and considerable. One time he exclaimed with a sigh of regret, "I've had many people say to me, if ever I get money, I'll give most of it to you." If ever they had a sudden windfall, however, an inheritance perhaps, or a soaring return on a stock market investment, it was only rarely that they fulfilled their promise. Instead, what I find is that they actually became more stingy. Money is a trap. The more one has of it, the more he depends on it for his security. Well, this is a very important lesson on many levels. One, the Master could have materialized that money. There's a delightful story of Swami Nityananda down in, I think he lived near Bombay somewhere, and he was the guru of Swami Muktananda. And he used to give money away freely to people, and the police became suspicious, and they came to him one day and said, well, you don't earn any money, where do you get it? And they wanted to see his printing press, where he printed this false money. And he said, yes, come with me, it's quite all right. He went to a nearby lake, and he went down into the lake till he was completely submerged in the water, and he came back a few moments later with huge wads of rupees in his hands. He said, my printing press is there, come show me, let me show it to you. And they all said, never mind, because they understood that what he did was really materialize it. And I don't seriously believe that a master who materializes money is seriously endangering the economy by inflation. Governments do that much better. When they can't get enough taxes out of people and don't dare ask for more, they print more money. So anyway, my guru certainly could have done the same thing. All the siddhis are a part of a master's ability and his attunement and oneness with God. But just as Babaji materialized for Lahiri Mahashaya a great palace, as you have read in Autobiography of a Yogi, which then dispersed itself into the infinite afterwards, my guru was on the same level of consciousness. He could have done that, but he didn't need to. Another story that a friend of mine has told about going to Ananda Ma, that people were giving her things and she was feeling so badly that she had nothing to offer at the feet of Ananda Ma, and her eyes were closed. She opened them and saw there were a few bananas right at her feet, sort of just waiting for her to give them. Well, they weren't there before she'd closed her eyes. and people would not have been placing those offerings to her. Anandamoyi Ma, to help her fulfill that devotional desire, helped her to have them so that she could give them. Mind you, when you've lived with masters, these things do not seem strange. But what may seem strange is why this great guru needed to worry about that. Well, he did it because he wanted us to know what it takes to serve God, what it takes to work in this world, that the really spiritual attitude is not just sitting back and letting God feed you as if you were sort of sitting under a fruit tree and letting the fruit fall into your mouth, and I can just imagine it missing sometimes. But in fact, you have to work. I have to say, I was a little upset with Divine Mother for pushing me into having to think about money. Money was not my interest. I remember at the age of 16, my father wanted to buy me a tuxedo, which men wear when they're going to elegant business parties and to balls and to the opera and so on. And I told him at the age of 16, don't buy it for me, Dad. I will never earn enough money to pay income tax. And that has been true. But that's because I didn't earn money for myself. I've certainly had to earn money. I've had to earn it to build this community. I've had to earn it to help people. And sometimes I've helped them with thousands. And I didn't expect it to come back, and I don't remember an occasion when it did. It doesn't matter. It's all God's. But remember that if you do have money, if you want that money to increase, you must also invest it. Isn't that true? And what better investment karmically than to help other people? And if you give, I lived through the period in Hollywood when movie actors and actresses became suddenly wealthy, and they weren't used to it, and they didn't understand that their wealth is something to be husbanded. And they would give money away freely, and many of them ended up quite poor. So recent generations of movie stars have understood that they shouldn't just give it away like that, nor does it help those other people when you give it too freely. What you should do is give in the right way for a good cause. Yes, of course. I have given my lifeblood to serving a good cause. If you want to help it, I certainly won't refuse. But I don't ask it for me, and I won't take it for me. Remember, anything that you do, if you give it back to God, it increases 1,000-fold. Like that story in that beautiful poem of Rabindranath Tagore's, when this beggar gave just a grain of rice, which is all he thought he could barely spare, to this great king, who was in fact God himself in that form. And when he came back from his begging tour that day, he found in his little bag one little grain of gold. That's a very valid story. You know, much truth is expressed better in fiction than in reality. Because whatever you give to God, as Jesus said, those who give up wife, husband, mother, father, everything for my sake, God's sake, in other words, they receive 100-fold. Now, I don't mean that they get many wives and many parents and all that. No. I mean that God gives them many blessings. If you do renounce your wife, I want to emphasize this, or your husband, it should not be if he or she is a good devotee. But if they're foolish and don't believe in God and are materialistic, then that is not a marriage made in heaven, as they like to say. Such marriages are purely a union in this world. And my guru said that many marriages are really a union between a well-made bow tie and a nice color of lipstick. It's not union of heart. It's not union of soul. So understand that if he had to work that hard, then yes, you have to work hard to achieve success. We're talking about the realm of karma. And God will, yes, perform miracles, but only after you've put out a great deal of effort. You see, what Master went through and what great saints go through is if their job is not just to free a handful of disciples, but if their job is to help many people, then they've got to go through those experiences. If my guru as a boy had not bothered to meditate and just experience the samadhi that was his perfect, right? He'd experienced it for many incarnations. But if he had done that, then we, his disciples, might well have said, well, meditation isn't our path. Well, he meditated more than any ordinary human being possibly could. And he worked harder for God than most human beings have the strength to work. But he did it for our enlightenment, so that we might know that this is how we can come to God. He said, if you do 100th part of what I've done, you will find God. Now, that means the right 100th part. Obviously, you've got to have some discrimination. Fools will not find God. You've got to use your intelligence. You've got to use your devotion. You've got to apply them in an outward way. My guru used to say, don't think that you can please God if you don't love people too. You must love them not with personal love, but with His love. Impersonal love is the ideal, and impersonal love does not mean that you look at other people and say, well, it's not my problem. You love them specifically, not just sort of like that saying, I love humanity, it's my neighbors I can't stand. What it means is that you are impersonal in yourself. You don't want anything from them. You love them for the God in them. You feel that it's God's love coming through you, but you don't want anything for yourself. You know, I went through a period, I've been through periods, but this period especially, when I could have been very bitter, and I could have wanted revenge, and I could have been pulled way down spiritually. But I said to myself, I'm not happy if I don't love. Purely for my own self-interest, I choose to love. And if they want to treat me differently, that's their problem. I used to think that sometimes I might say to them, I love you, and they would reply by saying, oh, you monster. It was just, delusion can be comical sometimes, but it won't be painful if you realize it's all God. As Ananda Ma sent me the message, take this as your Guru's grace. I thought that was one word I could never accept. But I found in the end that it was. It freed me to work for him in the way he himself had told me to do. So don't think that God's going to give you everything on a platter. You've got to work. But the thing is that little extra bit, you remember that story of Krishna? When Yashoda couldn't tie him, no matter how many lengths of string she tied together. So God, there's always that little bit. You can never fathom the infinite. And in your work for him, there's just that little bit extra, which only he can supply. He will supply it when you do your best. So, blessings to you, and may you know his love.
Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I give, and now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields seem alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I give, and now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows